What we will give you here today are clear, actionable things that you can do immediately to drive improvements in those areas. Now, what we'll kind of go through is a methodology. This methodology is what the SalesScripter utilizes. So this is a really good short training workshop for you to go through if you're a SalesScripter user, as this will help you to understand why you're being asked the questions you're asked and what types of answers that you should develop as you create your content inside of SalesScripter. So let's just jump right in. Before we get started talking about effective sales messaging, let's talk about what is very common sales messaging and might not be either as effective as it can be, but what a lot of people are using today. And let's look at a conventional approach. So we're going to look at some pillars here, and let's start with the company, product, functionality, features, and benefits. So if we kind of look at these one at a time, these are kind of what a very average or very common sales approach will use. So we'll start with the company we work for. So our headquarters is in such and such city. We have offices in so many countries. We've been in business for so long. We're the leading provider of such and such. Though you can think of each of these columns being filled with points, and those points that I just went through are the company-specific type of points. But then we can go on to fill the product column with product points, such as these are all the products that we offer. We move on to the functionality. This is what our products do. The features, these are the features that are offered. These are what you can add, what you can select from, and then the benefits that are delivered to our customers. And if we fill all those columns with different points, and we could call them nuggets of detail, then on top of these pillars is what rests our sales messaging strategy. So basically, when we have this foundation of, we could call it knowledge or points, that's what we rely on when we're talking to prospects. And so when we talk to prospects, we'll talk with this methodology, we'll talk about the company we work for, our products, and so on. And and that's not horrible. The main downfall with this approach is that it's a very all about me approach. My company, my products, my features, and whatnot. And this can work okay when you're getting an inbound lead, or if you're in a more farming type of sales role. You can do okay because you're dealing with prospects that know who you are or are wanting to buy. But when you're doing sales prospecting and you're trying to generate leads and create interest with prospects that aren't necessarily already talking to you or reaching out to you, this might not be the best approach because it's all about me. Now, the other thing is that when you're doing sales prospecting, you might not be at a point where you're ready to talk about you so much. For example, if you're talking to a prospect on a cold call, you might not be at a point where you can just jump right in and talk about your products. You haven't reached that point yet with the prospect. You're skipping a step. You need to first learn a little bit about the prospect and identify if it makes sense for you to talk about your products, or at least earn the opportunity to where the prospect is ready to hear what you have to say. So you need something else to talk about before that. And the downfall to this approach is what most sales managers and business owners hire their salespeople is that they will train them in this area. And what that means is that when the salesperson is prospecting, they might not know exactly what to say because they're not at a point where they can talk about themselves yet. And if they do just jump right in talking about themselves, they may have limited results. So some challenges with this traditional approach is, if I'm not at a point where I can talk about my products, I might not know exactly what to say and ask. I might have the coolest technology in the world, and so a good example of this is I've worked for a lot of software companies, and we had great technology. And if I'm calling a data center manager or a director of IT, I might have a lot of stuff that I want to talk to them about, but I gotta get there first. And with all my training being about these products and this technology, I just don't know exactly what to say and ask in order to get that meeting. I'm speaking from experience. And so what happens is you tend to improvise conversations when you pick up the phone or when you're in meetings. You shoot from the hip, you wing it, and you try to rely on your experience and hope that you fall into a conversation where the prospect expresses interest and asks you questions. Or you could be a salesperson and you say, you know what, I'm not in that category. I know what to say and ask, but the question is are you saying and asking the right stuff? And if you're not, or if you're improvising, you might not be getting the level of appointments that you need in order to hit your targets, and you might not be generating leads, you might not be selling enough, and if that is the case, you might not be making the income you want. And when that happens, you either might voluntarily leave your sales position and look for a new job, or you might be asked to leave because you're not hitting your sales performance targets, and then that leads to sales staff turnover. All of these challenges are extremely costly to both individuals in terms of their career and compensation, and to sales managers in terms of all the costs that come with replacing and training and trying to keep sales team members. So let's look at what is a different approach, and this is the SalesScripter methodology, which is we start with value. And value is not necessarily what you're talking about your products. This is focusing on talking about how your products help, and we'll talk more about value in a minute. The prospect pain that your products help to resolve. Qualify how when we often think about sales messaging, we think about what can I say to build interest and explain what I have to offer. But the most powerful thing in your sales messaging, which often gets left out when we only think about that, is what are the questions that I should be asking my prospect. So if you have the right questions in your sales messaging, not only will you be able to extract valuable information from your prospects, but you'll be able to qualify your prospects to make sure it makes sense to continue talking and that they're a good prospect to add to your pipeline. Objections are your prospects' messaging, and that's what they say to try to get rid of you or to try to weed you out. But how you respond to those objections should be part of your sales messaging. Interest, at some point we do need to build interest, and we always need to focus on building enough interest in order to get to the next step in our sales process. And credibility. Of course, you need to establish credibility in order to be successful. So these are the pillars that we build, and that we use to build our foundation of sales messaging. And each of these pillars or columns, we fill all very powerful data points. And then on top of that, when you have that foundation, you can build a different type of sales messaging strategy. And when you're on the phone, introducing yourself, networking, building your website, writing emails, if you rely on this foundation, you can have much more powerful communications, because this messaging is more about the prospect. About the first three columns are all about the prospect, and then the second three columns are more about you, but it's the most powerful points about you. So let's go through each column in this workshop one at a time. We start with value, and as I mentioned, value is not what your products do. Value is how your products help and what they help your prospect, your clients or customers to do. So we actually divide value into 3 levels in order for you to get even more granular with your messaging. But we start with technical value, and this is driving improvements at the lowest level. So it's technical, but it doesn't have to necessarily be technology. It's just what are the processes that you help to improve. And you could take the most commoditized product or the most everyday product, and most often they will improve some sort of process. They make something easier. They make something automated. They might make something faster. They might make something more reliable. So here are some examples of those. Think about what processes or systems do your products or services help with to improve. Or you might help the people of an organization that you sell to. Might help to make the people work better, get up and running better. You might provide training services. When we deliver technical value to our clients, that will typically work its way up and create business value. And business value are improvements in the area of revenue or costs or the delivery of services. And so some examples of those could be decreasing any type of cost, inventory cost, labor costs, improving revenue, decreasing market share, increasing market share. So these are all typically a result of improving technical value. And when we deliver both business and technical value, that will typically work its way up to create personal value. And so if you're selling to an individual, or you're selling to a particular individual in an organization, let's say a VP of HR, and when they buy your services and you help to improve their people, and that helps you to decrease your sales your turnover, and that helps to decrease costs, that might help that VP of HR to hit their annual quota or target of replacements needed or turnover target, which might lead to improved recognition, improved compensation. You could improve the workload. You could also deliver personal value to the people in the organization of the prospect that you sell to. But those are three levels of value that we can identify for what we sell. I mean, you could be real simple to just say, this is what I sell and these are the different ways that it helps. Or you could get a little bit more granular to divide those into different categories. Why would you want to do that? Well, in some of your communications, depending on who they're going to, if you're selling at a senior level, you might want to focus more on business value. If you're selling more at a manager or user level, you might want to focus more on technical value. When you're deeper into a sales process where you're where you're building rapport, you might focus more on personal value when you're talking to a prospect, and talking about the different ways that if they purchase from you, that it will help them personally. So there's a lot of power in having those different categories of value points. But if you wanted to be quick and just kind of get right to it, you could just identify the overall value that you offer. And you might say, well, that's great, but I don't really know the value that I offer, so I'm not really sure how to kind of fill in those buckets. Here's a step-by-step process that you can go through, and we have an example here of a fictional example of a software product called auto inventory replenishment. So identify the product, service, or feature that you want to try to identify the value for. Then let's identify what it does. So what is auto inventory replenishment? Well, that's a product that automatically submits orders to vendors based on inventory levels. And then you want to identify, how does that help? We start with the technical value because we're starting at the lowest level. And how does that help from a technical standpoint? And well, how that helps is that helps to decrease time spent ordering. So basically, by automatically submitting the orders, we're able to decrease the amount of time that we have to spend walking around a warehouse, plugging in numbers in a handheld, into a tablet or scanner or whatever. And so, the next step we want to say is, if we deliver that value, what does that mean from a business standpoint? And from a business standpoint, that means that we're able to decrease our staff and labor costs. Let's say that the buyer of this service might be a supply chain VP or manager. Well, if I'm able to automate all this, that means I don't have to have my staff running around the warehouse, which might mean I could do it with one less manager. So that just decreased my staffing cost by whatever, thousands of dollars a month, a year, whatever. So we can continue on to the next step to say, well, okay, if I'm selling to the VP of supply chain and we deliver this technical value and this business value, what does that mean to him or her at a personal level? Well, because we're automating this manual process, the VP doesn't have to reconcile or review or approve the orders on a daily basis, which means they can get home at a decent hour and have dinner with their family. That's creating a huge, that could be an extremely huge and powerful personal benefit maybe not to everybody. Maybe they're single and that's not important. But if you build rapport and you find out what's going on with that prospect, that might be a very powerful point to make. So we just outlined the value on those 3 levels for that product, and if that's the only product that we sell, we could stop right there. But in most cases, you sell more than one product, so we can kind of go through that and rinse and repeat. And so I did that here for 2 other products: predictive forecasting, a management dashboard, and then there's slightly similar but different value points. We got a lot of great data here now. The challenge with this, though, is that we have almost too much data, because if we're prospecting, let's say we're doing cold calling and we're going to try to operate within like a 2 to 5 minute phone call with somebody, we don't have time to explain all of these great things, right? So what we want to do is we want to do a last step, which is kind of summarize. So we summarize all of these columns. We kind of put all the products into a category. We kind of group up all the different technical value, group together the business value, personal value, and then this basically is our core value. And we have some really good nuggets here at the bottom, and what we can do is we can basically incorporate all these points into value statements. So we can, when someone says, well, what do you do? Well, we provide products that help in manufacturing companies to improve their ability to manage inventory. That's basically creating a sentence that says my technical value. We can say the business value, which is we help businesses to decrease their inventory and labor costs. Period. That's a quick sentence that highlights the business value. We could get a little fancy and combine the two to say, and then I'm going to mix my technical value with my business value to say, well, we help businesses to improve their ability to manage inventory levels, and that usually leads to a decrease in inventory and labor costs. So just combine the two. And I could actually reverse that to say, well, we help businesses to decrease their inventory and labor costs, and we do that by helping them to improve their ability to manage inventory levels. So as you can see there, I just created a bunch of different statements that are just different combinations of these value points. And when can I use those? I can use those when I'm networking. I can use those in presentations. I can use those statements in emails. I can use those statements as the responses to objections. So that is a summary of what the value pillar in our sales messaging strategy is. And can you see how powerful just that one pillar is? And we have 5 more to go. I want to show you this relationship here, which is basically we started with the product, and that led us, by going through that exercise, to identifying value points. And I'm going to come back to slides like this because there's a very linear relationship through all of these different pillars, and that relationship is what the SalesScripter is built on and this methodology utilizes. So just make note, we started with the product and that led us to the value, and now we're going to go on to the next pillar, which is pain. So pain is basically the challenges that your prospect is having. And if you only shift from, our natural instinct is just talk about me, my products, they do this. But the real thing is you want to find out what your prospects are having challenges with. And that's a very powerful step forward if you shift from talking about me to talking about their challenges. But what you don't want to do is talk to the prospect about challenges that you can't fix. Right? If you're an eye doctor, you don't want to talk to a patient about their knee pain. Right? You want to send them off to someone else, and you want to spend your valuable time talking to people who have eye issues or need improvements. So what you want to do is you really want to focus on pain you resolve, and you want to really focus on in your messaging. So we talked about 3 levels of value. We use 3 levels of pain that map to those as well, and it starts at the bottom with technical pain in the area of processes, systems, and people. And examples of those are manual, broken, cumbersome processes, poor performing systems or employees, lack of reliability. Those cause pain, and those could be in a particular area that your products help to drive improvements. And when your prospects are experiencing technical pain, that will lead to business pain in the area of revenue, cost, services aren't being delivered at a quality level, and those will work their way up and cause personal pain. So if your ideal prospect is a CIO and they're having system issues, that could lead to the CIO not hitting their SLA targets for the month. It could lead to that CIO not getting promoted or losing their job. So a lot of personal pain created when there's business and technical pain. And so what you want to do is you want to talk about pain with your prospects, but you want to talk about the pain that you fix. So you might say, well, I know I fixed this pain and I fixed that pain. Well, a really great way to identify the key pains that your products fix is to simply look at the value that you offer. And we just outlined that. And if you take that value, that will lead to a great list of the pain points that you fix, because you can say, well, what is the problem that this value that I offer fixes? Or you could look at the other way to say, if I'm providing this and I take it away, what happens? What problem starts occurring? So we're working off that same example. And number 2 is a really clean one to kind of see, is that if our inventory software helps to increase ordering accuracy, right? Because it's automated. You take the human component out. Well, what is the problem that, or if we improve ordering accuracy, what problem does that fix? Well, that fixes that there's errors in our orders. So we help. One of the pains that we should look for, those are the people that are going to be excited about that value, are companies that are experiencing errors in their orders. So you could go through all your value points and map to those a list of pain points, and then that becomes an extremely valuable list of points to make in your messaging. So when you're talking with a prospect, we help to fix this, and this. Are you having any of those challenges? Can you relate to those? Which one of those are you most concerned with? You can build email messages. You can build marketing content around these pain points. And that's one of the most powerful ways to get a prospect's attention, is to talk about one of these areas, because that's what they're going to be motivated to fix. And if they're not motivated to fix one of those areas, or they're not having that pain, they're not really a good prospect for you to spend your valuable time with. So that's the pain pillar. Now we're moving on to the qualify pillar, and these are the questions that we need to ask, right? To during our messaging, to qualify the prospect, to make sure that they fit. And the great way to get to a great list of the key questions that you need to be asking is to look, and I'm back to that sort of relationship slide here. We just identified the pain that we resolve. Well, let's take that list of pain that we fix, and for each pain point we can develop a question. So let's go back to point 2. That's the one we focused on. We fix the pain that errors are occurring in orders. So if we want to really talk to prospects that have errors, and we don't want to spend our valuable time talking to prospects that don't have errors, well, then one question we should ask, and it's number 2 right here, is how often are there errors with the orders that you're processing, right? Because if the answer there is never, okay, well, depending on what, we might want to ask other questions, but if that were the only thing that we cared about, then we don't want to talk to them. We want to move on. But of course, you can list out all your pain points, and for each pain point, you can list out a question. And then from that, you have the most powerful, or you have a very powerful list of qualifying. It's kind of actually pre-qualifying questions that you should be asking in your sales messaging. And bear in mind, if we listed out all the value, that led us to the pain, that leads us to the qualifying questions, we know that we should really be operating with an optimum sales messaging approach. Those pillars are really prospect focused, and that leads, all of that messaging is really talking about the prospect, right? So if you really incorporate that into the majority of what you say when you're really generating leads and cold calling, you're really going to be you're really going to be able to improve your ability to get the prospect's attention, because you're focused on them as opposed to talking about me, my products and whatnot. Now we kind of shift over to the other half of the pillars, and we're talking about objections. And basically, objections are your prospects messaging, right? So, but the reality is the good news is that there's only really a handful of objections that you're going to consistently face. And if you're not prepared for those, they can seem extremely challenging. Like, I'm not interested, just send me some information. We already use somebody. We're not looking to make any changes right now. But you can actually, if you develop in your messaging responses for those objections, you can greatly improve your results, because you're going to face those all the time. And so you might say, well, I understand we need to kind of maybe prepare for those, but how do you respond to those? Because those are pretty tricky. Well, we actually have a recommended approach, and let's talk about what not to do. So the options you have is, one is comply, which is to give in. So they say, I'm not interested. You say, okay, I'm sorry. Of course you need to give in at some point, but we say try 2 or 3 other things before you give in. You could try to overcome, which is to change the prospect's mind. Extremely hard to do when you're prospecting. There's a time and place to try to overcome. That's when you actually get the meeting, and you have enough time to work with to either build your case or really drill into why the prospect has that objection. Not enough time to do that when you're prospecting, at least over the phone or email or at an event, whatever. So the third option is to redirect, or sort of deflect, might be a better word. Deflect the objection into a related yet not directly addressing, not a direct area. So we redirect. Let me give you an example. So a prospect says, I'm not interested, and then you say, okay, I understand. Do you mind if I ask you real quick what you're doing today in this area? So here you're asking a question, and you're kind of you're giving them a question that doesn't really respond to them not being interested. It responds to what they're doing. So a good example of this would be to say, if someone says, we don't have any money to spend. Oh, I understand. Do you mind if I ask, are you guys using an in-house system, or have you purchased a commercial application in that area? So that's a question. It's in a related area, but it's not really just trying to resolve the fact that they're not interested or not going to spend money. So the great thing here is that in those 3 pillars that we just went through, those provide great areas for you to redirect to. So one of the areas where you can redirect to the most easily is to redirect to one of your qualifying questions that you've just identified. Or you could redirect to a value statement. You could redirect to a pain point. A prospect says, I'm not interested. You could say, oh, okay, I understand. I talk to a lot of people like you in your role, and they sometimes say that they're often having errors in their orders. Is that something that you see at all, or are you guys just perfect in that area? And so there I got away from the fact that they're not interested, but I'm asking them about errors. And so it's a really powerful way to go. When you identify the different ways that you can respond, you build an objections map. It's basically a simple tool, 2 columns, 1 column the objection, the other column your response. If you do nothing else but do this, you should see an immediate improvement in your results or your sales team. The SalesScripter will actually build an objections map out of the box for you. Moving on to the next pillar, interest. So we talked about the conventional approach that is all about me. At some point you do need to talk about you, right? You need to create enough interest for the prospect to move on to the next stage. So if you're on a cold call, you need to establish enough interest so that the prospect agrees to take a meeting. You don't have to create enough interest so that the prospect buys from you, unless you're selling something very transactional and they actually do commit and buy over the first call. But you want to create interest. But you don't necessarily need to just talk about me, these are my products. There's some other ways to be more powerful in how you build interest. So you can really try to connect the pain that your prospect has expressed to you with the value you offer. communicate the ROI that you deliver, explain how you're different, share a client story, paint a picture of a future state, paint a picture of what happens if the prospect doesn't do anything, doesn't purchase from you or anybody. And of course you can share some of your powerful company facts, the awards you've won, years in business, some of the interesting things about your company. So those are just some key ways that you can, basically points you can develop to fire away maybe at the end of halfway or towards the end of a conversation. So the last pillar is credibility, and this is basically, letting a prospect either know that you're a reliable provider, or maybe that you're not a foe, you're more of a friend than a foe. And this can be helpful just trying to get into companies. If somebody thinks you're a salesperson just trying to sell something, you can name drop people internal to their organization that you've met with. That can help to establish your credibility just as you're not just a salesperson trying to sell something. You're kind of an insider. You could also name drop other companies that you've worked with, other clients, to establish credibility through storytelling. Communicating that you're not completely available from either a scheduling or product standpoint communicates a high level of credibility. You're not needy in terms of it's okay to want their business, but you don't necessarily need their business. Or painting a picture of consensus. Everybody's, we got a line out the door, people are buying these like hotcakes. Don't use those exact words, but painting a picture of that can create credibility as well. Those are the 6 pillars, and you can either incorporate those on your own, or you can actually, if you like those, SalesScripter can guide you to filling in all your details in those areas, and then plug all those details to a library of scripts. I'll talk about that in a second. But I want to go back to the workflow of the linear progression that we went through. We started with your product. That led us to the value that you offer. That leads us to the pain that you resolve. The pain that you resolve leads to the key questions that you should ask when you're qualifying, and all of those feed into how you can respond to objections to keep conversations going. Now, SalesScripter, basically how it helps you is that it kind of asks you key questions, right? What do you sell? How does it help? What problems do you fix? What questions should you ask, right? So it's a little bit more elaborate than that, but that's kind of at the most basic level, is that it asks you key questions to extract the key nuggets of detail for your situation. Those details are then immediately plugged into a library of documents. So there's kind of 2 value benefits there. One is the questions kind of help you to get your ducks in a row, because most salespeople and most business owners have all this valuable knowledge just floating around their head, but it's not really organized in the right way, or it's not really, they're not really completely aware of all the key things and all the great things that they do, right? That way, and when they go in and they improvise in a meeting or on a call, they're not able to access all those key nuggets of data. Well, we help you to get all those pieces of the puzzle together and in the right place, organized, crystal clear. And then the second benefit is that while you're doing all that, you're filling in a massive document library of email templates, scripts, voicemail scripts, all sorts of really cool stuff. So 2 benefits there. Let's wrap it up with just saying, if you think that this is good stuff, there's lots of ways for you to get more information or more help with this. Again, you could take this, incorporate it with a blank piece of paper, and you can improve your results. But if you want more help, all of this content is based on and aligned with a book that I wrote called The Cold Calling Equation. It's available on Amazon.com, $15.95. Kindle version's $9.99. We also have a web training program that's aligned with the book and aligned with SalesScripter. It's a 10-week, 10-hour program. You can also visit SalesScripter. We have a free product you can get in and test it out, or there's a pay product as well. and we get together regularly for demonstrations and training sessions. We also have a package where we can bundle all this together, where we will go through SalesScripter with you to fill it in. So if you're a sales manager, we have a performance package where basically you sign up for SalesScripter, we help you to fill it out, your library gets published, then we provide training with these topics to your staff, and the training incorporates the messaging that was developed between you and us during when we first set up your SalesScripter profile. So that's incorporated into the training. When the students are done, they get a copy of the book, they get access their own account to SalesScripter where they can access the library of documents that we filled in together, and they can either access the library and use them immediately, or they can make their own versions and own changes. So that's a performance package. Call us for more detail on that. And that's it. Hope this information was helpful. Wish you all the best. Happy hunting, and we look forward to working with you in some way or another.